Hello there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to STEM Explore 2025, the fourth edition of the annual STEM Symposium organized by STEMonsters Education to celebrate the National Science Day. Over the next hour or so, we are going to delve into a topic that is both timely and essential: the role of AI in transforming the way our students learn. AI is transforming almost every industry, making tasks easier than ever. But when everything is so easily accessible, convenient, and automated, how do we ensure that students still develop critical thinking, creativity, and deep problem solving skills? And finding answers to some of these questions, if not all, is the purpose of this webinar today. Hi, I'm Dr. Sonali DASGUPTA, founder of STEMonsters Education. We work with schools and students to implement hands-on STEM programs that foster innovation by focusing on design thinking and a first principles approach to learning. I welcome you all to this exciting panel discussion on the role of hands-on STEM in the age of AI. We are honored to have with us today distinguished guests who bring deep expertise and diverse experiences from academia to industry, spanning education, AI, and innovation. I'm looking forward to hearing their insights and understanding how hands on learning and AI can complement each other in a child's learning journey. We have with us today Vivek Kaushik. He comes with more than 23 years of cybersecurity and professional services experience, having spent his entire career in customer success and services in various MNCs across Asia Pacific and Japan. Currently, he is the Senior Director at CyberArk Software Singapore Private Limited in the security services and customer success domain across APJ. Originally from India, Vivek completed his master's in software engineering from NUS and has since settled in Singapore. He also happens to be a dad to adorable 5-year-old twins. Welcome, Vivek. Glad to have you here.
Glad to
Then
be here, Sonali.
we have Dr. T.G. Lakshmi, who is the head of research at Shikha Institute of Education, Shiksha Academy in Mumbai. With over 20 years of diverse experience spanning the social sector, educational institutions, and the software development industry, Lakshmi brings interdisciplinary perspective to the education sector. She holds a master's degree in computer engineering and a PhD from the Center of Education Technology at IIT Mumbai. Welcome, Lakshmi.
Thank
And
you, Sonali.
good to have you here. And then we have Parth SARWATE. He is the director at the Office of Undergraduate Admissions and Financial Aids at Ahmedabad University. He has a master's degree in education from Harvard University and an MBA from IMDR Pune. Parth has over 2 decades of experience working in both the school education reform at scale and developing higher education institutions. He's previously worked with the University of Southern California, RPG Foundation, Azim Premji Foundation, and Shiv Nadar University. Welcome, Parth, to this webinar.
Thank you, Sonali.
Thank you. A very warm welcome to you all. I'm eager to gather insights, to spark new ideas, and hopefully by the end of this hour, we will go back with meaningful takeaways for all of us. So, Lakshmi, I'll start with you. There is no way that we can isolate technology from education today. Similarly, we'll not be able to isolate AI from education either. So, in this situation where AI can provide instant answers, instant gratification to any problem, any topic, I wonder, what is the need for students to develop critical thinking and problem solving abilities? That is a question that haunts many parents. Would you like to shed some light on that?
Yeah, thanks, Sonali. You rightly pointed that AI has a lot of knowledge available to us at our fingertips, right? That has been there throughout, even internet provided it. But still, it doesn't mean that, we are not critical, we stop being critical thinkers. Um, that's the first argument that I want to kind of give to people who say, you don't need to be expert at anything anymore.
Hmm.
The second thing that I want to also kind of go about saying is that over reliance is sometimes dangerous. When you kind of let's say we have GPS now, so over reliance on GPS has shown that spatial thinking ability is kind of getting reduced, right? So similarly, if we kind of rely on the expert level knowledge all the time, then our ability to kind of think at some let's say some skills such as estimation or ability to read code, if you want to kind of talk about, say, code is already created, but ability to read code, does that code
Hmm.
really make sense, right? Estimation, am I in the right estimate to put this much amount of, let's say, water in this vessel? I see a lot of kids struggling with that, right? So such kind of skills become paramount important, I would
Hmm.
say. The third idea that I want to also kind of tell everyone is that surface level integration. Let's say, yeah, AI can become a tutor. Why don't you chat with the chat bot? But surface level integration also is dangerous and needs to be avoided. Given that those points, I would kind of say over reliance is dangerous, but at the same time does not mean that we stop becoming critical thinkers.
Hmm. So what I'm hearing is it's about not just gathering facts and putting them together, is the comprehension and make connecting the dots. Even though AI can connect the dots, I guess it is still connecting what we have already told it to connect at some point.
Yeah, but also some very specific skills like
Mm-hmm.
estimation, ability to
Cognitive
read code.
development.
Those start
Hmm.
becoming kind of very important aspect, which was
Hmm.
also earlier important, but they start becoming quite important for everyone rather.
Right, that's a very interesting question, interesting point that you mentioned, and I'll come back to you because a lot of argument that I hear is about when calculators were developed. Why do we still need to? That's the best example that's given by everybody, right? We did not stop calculating when calculators were developed, but I think there lies a certain difference between what AI is doing and what calculators are doing, because AI surpasses the domain over which it can give you answers. So calculators were limited to a very small, narrow part of the skills that the people were using or students were using. And AI has the ability to cover almost every skill set. It is not limited to maths, it is not limited to calculation. And it's a very interesting point that you have raised, that surface level integration is probably the biggest thing which we should be careful about, because it takes away the cognitive development of the students in a way. However, as you very rightly also said, that we can't avoid AI, right? We have to live with it. There is no point not having AI. So I'll go to Vivek at that point of the conversation. You come with a very extensive industry background and you have an understanding of how the tech industry especially is evolving, which is what everybody wants to go for eventually, or most people want to go for.
Hmm.
So, with where it is headed in terms of AI integration in every aspect of the industry, in your opinion, what do you think would be the skill sets that the industry would be looking for from the future generation?
Future is actually coming already. Okay, hey, first of all, thanks for inviting me. This is such a privilege to meet
My pleasure.
smart people like you and also get an audience. So I'm privileged to be here, Sonali and the team. Okay, so very interesting question. So I'll give you guys some very interesting insights that I've seen in the market. So first of all, a lot of organizations have started adopting AI in business processes. This is obviously the nature of the abilities of AI, Gen AI, as it is called right now. And also, the economic conditions are in a very unique position where it makes sense, where technology has already started fusing with operations, that you can start bringing in some of this kind of automation, but with some intelligence capabilities and accelerate growth and reduce costs and increase margins, which are kind of the things that most companies are looking at. So even within our organization or the organizations I work with, for improving both the productivity of the workforce, and that's where you have Microsoft Copilot, for example, or Gemini. Those kind of tools are being encouraged. and also bringing those kind of capabilities in the tools and techniques that we develop. So our workforce is encouraged to not just use it for managing the business process, but also bring in that expertise to the products that we are developing. Like my company develops identity security. There are some companies who are developing banking infrastructure, and I work with those guys, and they are actually trying to bring in those capabilities. So the best metaphor I can think of is that there was a time that a pilot had cables to pilot the
Mhm.
aircraft. And the skill of the pilot in understanding how the cables work and physical force was very critical. Today's A380s and A350s have nothing to do with cables and nothing to do with muscles. It's a human machine interface. So it's a human who's making a decision about what the machine should be doing. But the complexity of managing the operation is so high that the machine has to use computers and analysis to figure out how the air launch should go and how the wing should go, and it's called fly by wire basically, right? So that's where we are kind of heading towards, which is our and I'll touch to the point of calculators. All the technology until now was always developed based on the fact that all the states were defined by humans. It was a rule-based system. The thing about Gen AI is that it is generating outcomes and states which humans have not thought of, which is why it's kind of like an inflection moment. But what it is leading to is a lot of noise and false positive as well. Well, I would
Hmm.
say not a lot, but a lot, but considerably interesting. And it's leading to places which common sense tells it's wrong, but the system just says because I'm extrapolating some
Hmm.
data points, it makes sense. I'll give you an example. You may examine X-rays 80% of the time. You can find out if there's a cancer better than a doctor. But sometimes the model can
Yeah,
take a smudge and think it's a tumor, right? Because
true.
it doesn't know the difference between a shadow and a smudge. So coming back, right? So when you talk about skills of the future, being able to utilize and give the right kind of prompts to generate content, but also analyze content quickly, but also have the abilities to understand whether what the outcome that is coming is realistic or not, right? The human intelligence, the guy who's sitting in the pilot seat, the guy who's going to be sitting in the driver's seat in a train or a car, that's where we are kind of heading towards. And then I'll just do a small last point, which is even today, there is a one key thing, which is that the outcome that comes from any Gen AI model doesn't have any accountability. There is no one who can tell you whether it is the training data which is
Yeah.
bringing this output or it is the model created by the organization, which is why you can see that it is never yet put into a life and death or super critical situation. And if it is being put something like that, there's always a human accountable person sitting there. So the last piece is the accountability, which we'll touch later to things like ethics. So being able to use it to make yourself go faster, being able to analyze the information to make sure it is correct, and to provide the ethical coverage. That's where I think the industry is going, in
Very
my view.
interesting thought there, Vivek. Thank you very much for that. I think the key summary that I'm picking up from that conversation is having a human who is still human to understand what is going behind the machines is what is needed. At the same time, being able to work with the machines to achieve the outcome. And if you have someone who doesn't have that depth of knowledge to be able to work with the machine and say, yes, this is right or no, this is wrong, is where the pitfall starts. But having the skill, I think the future generation is something that we are looking forward to. From what I understand, you're saying is somebody who is able to work with the machines, having the skills of working with the machine alongside a deep knowledge of the domain or a domain expertise, as we call it. So with that, I'll go to you, Parth, because you've been working in the education domain, higher education industry, right? And you have a very bird's eye view of higher education. When students are just coming out of school, they are working towards building a career. And now with this advent of AI, now AI is almost about 3 odd years old, and it has transformed everything. So do you see in the that there has been a change in the student choices when they are coming for higher education? Is there a pattern that you are observing when they come for applications for higher education?
Um, Thank you very much, Sonali. I think everything
Thank you.
that Lakshmi said and Vivek said are very relevant. And young people are what we call digital natives now, and
Yes.
they are much more comfortable using AI. And so, one of the things we see, which is very different today, is what their choices are. And some of them are still, those choices are still being led by parents who were from a different era, and therefore they want to choose professional courses, they want to choose technology. It's not necessarily that they have a love for what they're choosing, but they're being told that, okay, this is an area in which you can do better, and therefore you choose this. So that's one which something that hasn't changed a lot. What has changed is their ability to utilize technology has changed a lot. So they are much more comfortable using technology, but it also has lots of challenges because they are now wanting quick answers. They're not willing to do the hard work to get those answers. And this is really critical because a lot of times, in newer universities, in more responsible universities, they're not looking for just problem solvers or people who can use tech. They're looking for, as Vivek said, people who understand tech, but are also able to think for themselves. Therefore, what is more important is, can you question? Can you create an argument? Can you communicate? And I think those are the skills that young people also need. I think the choices that they are still making are driven by the tech world and saying, okay, this is where I probably have an opportunity to get a career. But we also see people now, changing their preferences. I think in the more urban progressive schools, you'll see students still choosing arts, humanities, and saying, okay, I'm still going to learn tech, but I'm going to use it with understanding of arts and humanities. But if you go to the smaller towns, villages in India, they are still driven by, if I get good marks, I'll go into sciences and technology. If I don't get good marks, then I'll look at commerce, business, or arts. So this dichotomy and sort of hierarchy still remains. So it's a little unfortunate because I think technology is here to help everybody move to the next level. Though there is a certain amount of disparity in how young people are exposed to technology, even though today a lot more people have access to it, there is a certain amount of disparity in who gets to use it a lot more. But now that telephones, all mobile phones have that possibility, it's becoming more and more democratic. Today, students, when they write essays, or they write a personal statement, you see a large number of them are using AI tools to write their personal statement. They're not actually putting in the effort. This is a concern, but I think this is also where universities and schools need to change, because they need to go back to some basics to say, how do you reason, how do you think, how do you write an argument, and then of course, one of the biggest things that I keep talking about is how do you question well, because if you want a better answer from generative AI also, you need to have a better question.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid point, Parth. I remember when I'd attended a meeting with Nobel laureates, and one of them, I was telling my daughter the same thing. What he had said is, it is not the solution that makes a scientist a Nobel laureate. It is the question that he decides to solve, or the problem that he decides to solve, that makes him a Nobel laureate. And if you just bring it down and make it relatable, it is the questions you ask, whether it's a which problem statement to pick up and solve for. If you have the ability, if the students have the ability to question right, then I think they are more sorted than anybody else. And you brought up a very interesting point about children or students writing their assessments and essays using ChatGPT. And the question I think I personally, as an educator, believe is, it is more, rather than it being a shortcoming of the student taking a shortcut, it is actually a revelation of the lack of proper assessment tools. What are we trying to assess? And I think that is what AI has kind of shook the educators with, because till now there was no AI, assessments, marks, everything worked. Now with AI, everybody comes up with a cent% assessment or answer sheet, right? So were we really testing the students on something that is intangible? Were we really testing what they knew, or were we testing what they knew only as facts and putting together stuff? So I think this is also a wake-up call to the educators and the education in general about what are we trying to test the students, and what is it that we are teaching them and telling them that you will be tested upon, and which is why there is this disparity between education and once they go into the careers, because that is where they have to apply their learnings. So Lakshmi, I'll come back to you on that front, because this kind of, we are moving from careers and now we're moving back to education. I want to ask you, like, if we are to help students develop the skills that higher education or even the industry will truly value tomorrow, while AI will continue to be omnipresent, it's going to stay. So do you think there are any fundamental changes that, let's say, educators need to make in their teaching approaches, not just the curriculum, not just the assessment tools, overall, as they teach, what they teach and how they teach? Is there anything fundamental change that needs to happen, or are we all doing well?
Yeah, so thanks, Anali. I'll also start a little bit about AI. Right, I think Vivek also touched upon it. We have had AI since 1960s, right? Where we have tried to build artificial intelligence. So it's been there for quite a long time. There have been cognitive tutors, there have been intelligent tutoring systems which have been developed in research, right? So research in education. So AI as a field in AI in education has been existing for quite a long time. Now, what is really blown in the last 2, 3 years, which you rightly pointed out, is this ability to access AI. It's become very democratized, right? So you have a chat GPT, which gave a very easy interface, where just like I could enter things in stuff, I could go and do that and interact with a AI model, right? That's what kind of brought the whole just the floodgates opened, right? So now going back to the question that you were asking me about, what specifically skills do we
Change.
need changed, right?
Hmm.
So until now, there's been a lot of focus on domain knowledge. So we would be tested on the content of a particular domain, let's say it be science or humanities, everything. Now that content is available right there with the AI model. So
True.
even if you kind of have assessments, like you rightly said, essays or some sort of 2 mark questions that we usually have kind of come up with, that is no more going to cut, right? So now the next thing is a bunch of domain skills. So when I say domain skills, it is something like, how does a cybersecurity expert work? Okay, what are the ways they use to troubleshoot? Right? How does a scientist think? Okay, I'm not now going only on the science aspect. Now, how does a historian think?
Yeah.
What are historical thinking skills? Right? If looking at an artifact, how does a historian analyze an artifact? So those skills also come and they become of paramount importance, and they are mostly process based skills, right? So they become, so you
Yeah.
have domain content, domain knowledge. Now, I'm not saying like forgo domain knowledge, but along with domain content, you need these domain skills. Now, apart from that, there are certain transdisciplinary skills, right? Like, let's say, learning how to learn has become very important. Okay, how to kind of now teaching kids how to survival skills are becoming important. There are many schools coming up in the US
Yes.
which kind of do a boot camp for survival skills,
Oh, even in India.
right?
Even in
Even
India.
in India, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
I work with
so
some of
those
them.
transdisciplinary skills are becoming important, paramount importance. So I would say that nothing must just changed into what you need to know, but along with that, these have become highly, now this usually what happens is, as a scientist you would learn it as a job. You would be paired up with your your senior scientist. You would learn it on the job. Okay, how does a researcher do it? Or if you are with a historian, and going for an excavation, you would learn it on the job. But these skills are becoming very important, right? And
True.
transdisciplinary skills are usually taught as a way of life, or someone you model and that you learn. But this also are becoming highly important. So I would say that things are changed. Like there is more to learn for the kids in than what we used to learn, is what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's lovely. Actually, what it translates to and is basically saying that instead of teaching a subject, you are teaching a way of thinking. Rather than focusing on knowing the facts, you're focusing on how do you connect the facts together. Rather than focusing on having one subject knowledge, you're focusing on how does that subject connect to different subjects.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
a
sorry, but I
fundamental
wanted to
change.
add, yeah, sorry,
Mhm.
you had asked me specifically what changes for a teacher.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the idea of a classroom, how we look at a classroom also has changed. I usually you would see pictures of a classroom where teacher is at the, at some dais or something, and the children are there and they're all listening. But now it's something. It's not like
Very
that. The
different.
teacher learns along with the child. The teacher
True.
guides the child. The teacher is no more a teacher. Is a facilitator. Is a co-guide,
Mentor.
kind of works with the children, learns with the children sometimes, because we don't know everything, right, at some point in time. So learns with the children. I think those are the things that change when it comes to teaching aspect, right?
Awesome.
So
I agree. I agree. I think that thank you very much for elaborating on that and bringing into perspective why the change of everything that we are seeing needs to happen at the classroom level at itself, where students start building up the skills. In fact, I always keep saying that STEM, and you very rightly said, STEM is not about science. STEM is a way of thinking. STEM is a mindset. It is about connecting different things. So we may use the word STEM, but essentially what it means is trying to connect the dots. If I went to an Ed Sheeran concert a few weeks ago, and the way the guy was using technology live in front of a 35,000 odd crowd, he's a musician. He doesn't need to be comfortable with technology. But being comfortable with technology, being able to figure out, okay, I can use this soundbox in this way, I can record, I can do that, gives him that edge. And if you want to survive, I think adaptability to technology, whether it is AI, whether it is in any other form, has got to happen. And how do you build that adaptability? It doesn't build over 1 week, 1 year, 2 years. It has to start from the classroom level in how the teachers start building the mindset. So thank you very much, Lakshmi, for pointing this out to our audiences. And for me as well, like sometimes you just need to hear those things to put it in perspective. So actually, Vivek, I'll come to you at that point because we are talking of technology. And as we're saying that, technology and education and AI, everything is going to be all interconnected. We'll not be able to isolate things much further going into the future. We are also saying that students need to be digitally savvy. We need to give them access to the digital world. We can't keep them away and say ChatGPT is banned. So now, as someone who's an expert in cybersecurity, even before AI was there, and we are all aware of the problems and issues with the digital world, would you share some essential digital literacy skills or security awareness that must be developed in these students from an early age so that they are equipped to explore this vast digital world in a safe way? Just like we tell them, look right, look
Yeah.
left when crossing a road.
In fact, what you were saying, Sonali, it goes back to the basics. So I've always considered internet as like a window in a house. So do the same thing that you would do in the window of your house. You wouldn't put valuables next to the window. You wouldn't put really personal stuff on the window. Somebody comes on the window and shouts at you, wouldn't really believe it. Kind of the same thing applied to internet. I think one of the things that gets a little bit more uh, dangerous with AI is, and you can probably see it more in the last 2 years, is disinformation and misinformation. And the
True.
idea of using Gen AI to create visuals and audio and images to impersonate or to say and do things which actually attribute to somebody famous, but actually that's not what they have said, right? And one of the things that I think we need to ask our students to do is to, for that purpose, create a bit of a critical thinking, not to just be compliant and take it as it is, and to always question that does it really make sense what this person is. Tomorrow Modi starts flying kites, like does it make sense that he should be flying kites, right? Like as an example. So coming back to kind of digital literacy skills. So first and foremost, online privacy and data protection. In fact, as a result of AI, it is even more important what you put out there. Previously, what you put out there could be copied. Now, what you put out there can be used to train a
Morphed.
digital image of you. and you would have no control. There are already incidents that have happened where kids' photos were taken to train an AI model, and they were put into some very dirty kind of photos, and it created a lot of mess for a whole bunch of people, right? So I would definitely recommend that. That's one of the first things, that what what you would put out in the world and what kind of digital information you would ask your kids to put out. That's the first kind of digital literacy skill and data protection. The next thing is just the basics. Nowadays, I'm in security, so I can tell you scams, phishing scams, voice call, phishing scams. These are going all over the place. So ability for our kids and any pretty much, I mean, since we have a forum here, I would also recommend that please teach it to your elderly. They are at even a bigger risk. But then the digital landscape is wider, but they are very vulnerable. But so that's all of us should be understanding that if we get a unforeseen phone call from a unforeseen number, we should always take it as a suspect. If we get a WhatsApp messages that comes from a friend that hasn't talked to her for 10 years and sounds like he or she's suddenly very interested in my life, I should always take it with a pinch of salt, right? These are just window. Somebody's on the window, looks like a friend I haven't seen for 10 years. Why would a friend be here after 10 years, right? That's the first question. So that's the second aspect, right? And then I think we also have not just to protect our people, but also guide them how to use social media responsibly. I'm a bit disappointed that after all this is happening in the world, hundreds and thousands of people will get a message and forward it to five other people, especially if it says send it to five other people if you want to get blessings and if you want to make sure people's lights are paid or so are paid. Like it just boggles my mind that for somebody who wanted to save humanity, the best path was to send a WhatsApp message and asking them to be forwarded to five people. Like it's like it never computed. So we have to teach people, we have to teach kids that just because somebody says something and you feel that's something that message is verified, validated before you forward it, verify and validate it before you post something about someone. What you do in physical gossip has a smaller blast radius, right? In cybersecurity, we call it blast radius, like 5, 10 people in the village. What you post on the internet is huge; it can go to anybody. And then you treat others the way you want to be treated. The golden rule. If somebody posted about you, would you be okay with it, right? Would you be happy that somebody posted something uh, something embarrassing about you, which was a laughing thing, but you don't want it to be discovered in a wayback machine 10 years from now. So these are some of the skills I would say that all our kids really need to be able to go to the next stage.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. I think it's very pertinent what you mentioned about digital literacy. So, digital literacy is on one side, but I think what precedes that is responsibility. Because a lot of times we tell the children, yes, you can do this in this manner, you can go Google the data, but we forget to tell them, validate the data. We tell them, yes, you can submit an essay with ChatGPT, and especially with AI kind of exploding exponentially, we allow them to use ChatGPT. We say it's okay, we are progressive, use ChatGPT, we will still assess you, but we forget to tell them how to use it in a responsible manner. And thank you, Vivek, for mentioning that social media responsibility or being responsible while being in the digital world should probably support digital literacy at an equal pace. So that's very crucial. I think Google has some beautiful digital literacy courses, but I think while I have been through them and I do the same things with our students, it is important that the focus with the advent of AI must shift more towards responsibility before the literacy. Um, Parth, actually, back at you. You as an higher education institute, and you have to adapt your admissions and your curricula and everything to actually make sure that the students who come there, they really have that depth of knowledge, and you have to make sure that your admission results are not ChatGPT generated essays. So how do you ensure, I would like to know from a higher education point of view as an institution, how do you ensure that students actually go through these 4 years to develop a skill in depth, rather than just relying on the AI tools and then going over with the superficial knowledge or surface level knowledge that Dr. Lakshmi started with. That surface level knowledge is kind of scary. So how do you battle that or tackle that?
It's a difficult question because everybody has that
Mm,
option now and has that they have very quick access to these tools. And I think
mm,
one big challenge that we see young people coming in with is their inability to work with other people. Now, problem solving is going to be always a people driven effort, and though
yes.
AI and other tech tools are going to aid you to do that, the most complex problems can still not be solved by AI. I think we need human intelligence. We need the ability to work with each other. I mean, even if you have the best solutions, can you actually implement them without being able to convince somebody that this is worth doing? Even let's say there was a solution to climate change, but there were 50 countries who weren't agreeing to it. If you don't
Mm,
have leaders who can convince them to come together on board, it's a gigantic problem that cannot be solved just by having a solution. So I think uh,
true.
at the higher education level, one of the things we do very we do well, but I also think this is going to happen in the future, is assessments are going to change to not just looking at what you know, because
Mm,
that of course you can now generate, is how can you work with other people to solve problems.
mm,
So therefore, at the work level, a lot of problem solving is happening together. But at the institution level, at the education level, we are
true.
still asking people, "What do you know?" And we give them a question paper, and we say,
Exactly.
"Okay, answer those questions." Now, there, I think we still need that capability that you have put in some effort and you know something, and therefore you're able to answer some things. But I think beyond that, how do you take those skills to work with each other? Another key concern that I have is the ability to read critically. I think this is a very very scary slope that we are on. That there is an answer to everything at the tip of a button,
Yes.
and therefore the ability to read critically, to read non-fiction, this is the patience to be able to read itself is going away. And this I'm very concerned about because students not only don't read while coming for class, they don't read anything at all. So and they try to find answers quickly to everything, and everything should be pre-packaged, delivered to them. If you give them a article to read and you say you have to read, they'll look for a summary. They look for
Mm,
questions that they can ask, which will give you a summary. So I think one way we think this needs to be done is to make people work in groups, put their
yeah.
tech away for a little while, bring the tech when you need it. But
Mm,
I think all educational institutions will have to think about how to deal with technology inside the classroom. When should it be allowed? When should it not be allowed? And I'm not only talking about technology within exams. I think there should be more revolution, and we should allow technology in the classroom, in the assessment sector, and then see, okay, even with all the tools, can you really answer things?
mm.
That will be more exciting assessment, I would believe. And
That's
someday
so.
we'll probably get there.
No, that's a fascinating observation. I was engrossed in listening to you because you brought such a fresh perspective to it. It is no longer about knowledge alone. It is no longer about application skills alone. It is also going to be a lot about people skills, skills that make us human, skills that help us work as a species to work together and come up with an idea. It is no longer a single brain, but the four of us talking here together to come to some idea generation. You can't put four machines together to talk to them and come up with something. You end up with a mess. But humans have this capability as a species to figure out what are the right things to figure out from everybody's opinion and come to a solution. I think people skills and human centric approach to education in the higher education or even at schools for that matter, I think it is such a wonderful thing that you mentioned. And uh, if the focus changes from tech enable from, let's say, tech solution to using tech only as a tool, I think we can still conserve the cognitive development. We can still conserve and nurture the comprehensive skills of the students. Yes, attention span is going down. Children learn from YouTube nowadays. They don't learn from books. Right, and there's a study, enough research which has gone into doing that. That's why the YouTube boom, and we have the likes of so many companies. Will not take names, but yeah, that's how YouTube has come in, because it's just faster. Having said that, of course, there are different kind of learners, right? We have 4 category of learners: the visual learner, the kinetic learner. So of course some students will benefit from that, but as a generation of students where there is everything, I want to go back to the basics. And the Lakshmi, this question is for you. There's enough research, right, to show that in order to build competency, the learners must go through a frustration phase where they fail and they get frustrated. They have to go through that phase. And only then can they gain deep understanding of a subject. But now with artificial intelligence, with AI and ChatGPT, it is short-circuiting that path. There is no longer that frustration phase. You ask a question, you get a question. Short circuit, bam, right? So I want to ask that, what, in your opinion, would you, and you also mentioned about learning to learn some time ago, because that's going to be the skill. How do you ensure there's learning to learn mindset developed in students? So what do you think that we could do in our teaching approaches to enable this kind of deep learning? As Parth was also saying, we need to ensure something, we need to do something to ensure there is deep learning. Would you have any kind of ideas, or do you have any kind of even hypothesis from the research you've done with so many students? How can we enable deep learning and learning to learn mindset in the students?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a very nice question. I want to touch upon certain things, right? Parth mentioned very good points, which I want to reiterate, which is learning is effortful, right? You can't make learning easy.
Yeah.
Acha, you know those courses that they say learn this in 10 days, you will be a master. No, I think that needs to kind of that's a misnomer. Learning is effortful, and meaningful. Deeper learning is much more effortful. There is a lot of theory that says about productive failure, that students need to fail at something, and that's when they kind of become better at certain things. Let's say you fail at building a model. You fail, you kind of try to make it many more times, you fail, but you learn so much more from that. So I wanted to reiterate on that point. But certain things that we could do, one is modeling, right? When I say modeling, I mean modeling 2 ways. Modeling as adults on how we learn. Are we learning at all as adults is something that I want to kind of bring out. Are we learning anything at all, and how do we learn, right? If when we see children around us, are we still on our phones doing doom scrolling over YouTube and on? Do we have some time off from the mobile or wherever we are at? That sort of modeling that I want to say. How many books are we reading, picking up and reading books for that, for our children or for the students whom we see kind of read that? How much time do we allow in schools and colleges to kind of discuss books? Get them to just read. I know many schools start this drop everything and read. There are some dear time allocated. But how do children read? Do we also support them with something? Right. So I want to say modeling that. The second modeling is model building itself. How much time in our curriculum do we allocate for building physical models? Right. There is a lot of research on learning through body, which is called embodied cognition. Let's say, why do you see people who are watching sport, right? If they're engrossed, you would see them twitching and turning. If there is a match in place, you would see their body really kind of into it. Why is learning not like that? You learn better with your body. People say that. And there's a lot of theory on embodied cognition which says you learn better with body. So I want to touch upon that, right? Can we get to model and do kids learn via modeling?
The hands-on
So that,
learning.
yeah. And the third aspect is reflection. How much do
Oh,
we get our
yes.
children to reflect
To reflect.
on what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, right? That's that at some point in time, I think reflection always is a metacognitive
Yes.
strategy to kind of assimilate what you kind of did. How much time do we give for reflection? Yeah, Parth wants to add something. Parth, go
Yes.
ahead.
Lakshmi, I really loved what you said. And, I was remembering some of our faculty telling me something very interesting. We have something called a blank lab in physics. So, this blank lab, students go in there and they see nothing, and they are usually surprised that why are there no equipment here. And they are told that, we'll give you 250 rupees and a problem, and you have to build your own equipment. Now this is
Wow.
exactly what Lakshmi was talking about, the idea of modeling. We've
Wow.
made so many tools that we don't know how to make tools anymore. And I think
Yeah.
unless we strip away that capability to, from young people, they will not learn how to develop tools. Lakshmi also talked about estimation. If you have to fill a bucket with water, or you have to say how many grams is a certain spoon, these are things that unless you experiment, you are never going to figure this out. And I think
True.
experimentation is at the heart of education. And
True.
unless we take away those tech tools and say, okay, now do it by scratch, I think that's when they will learn all of these newer skills.
Yeah, beautiful. I love the idea of a blank lab. We do something similar with, we don't give them money, but we do give them a bucket of trash. And we say, it's like, the whole concept of making things from trash itself, which we used to have in our times, has gone away because children don't have time. They have everything modular, they have everything templatized. So, unless there is experimentation, and building a templatized kit is not experimentation, where you fix everything and it ends up giving you the final answer, is not experimentation. So Lakshmi, I don't know if you wanted to add on that, but I love the concept of reflection as well, because it is all again going back to the people centric, child centric education, because only when the child reflects, they understand what went right, what went wrong, what they love, what they don't, and only then can the system adapt to the child's learning pathway. Actually, yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this a bit. Like, for kids especially, now, you can't generally go to a classroom in a fourth grade and say, now reflect. Yeah, now make.
True,
It's
true,
very difficult. Their children are
true,
lost there. So you will have to
true.
scaffold this. You will have to
Yes,
kind of, and that's when the role of a teacher or a parent kind of comes
yes,
out, that you need to scaffold all this. So that what
yes,
becomes crucial in education rather than just the photosynthesis or define, just write to
true.
mark, and this is what it is all about. So yeah, just wanted to add that as well.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's beautiful. Scaffolded learning has proven to improve the adaptability and learnability of children. Rather than telling the child what to do, the scaffolded learning, so it's a process, right? And research, there's enough research to show that scaffolded learning at an early age actually improves the learnability of the child as they move on to high school. And going back to the reflection and the people centric learning, I actually want to go to Vivek before we are reaching towards the end of the conversation. Vivek, I want you to touch upon something which you talked about right at the very beginning of the conversation, which was about ethics. In a world which is driven by tech, in a world where everything is at a gray area of what is right and what is wrong, especially with ChatGPT saying, no, it's not plagiarism, yes, it is plagiarism, how do we build the ethical, how do we teach students or even the young adults the use of, or not even use, the definition of ethics in using technology?
Wow, you saved the toughest question for the last. Look, I can be honest with you. When it comes to ethics, nobody has like the right answer, right? So, because ethics, in a way, is what is socially acceptable in current times. So, what we consider as ethical today probably wasn't considered ethical 50, 100 years ago, and may not be considered ethical another 100 years later. So it is not a rigid, it is a moving thing. It is our understanding on what we accept as our responsibility and our responsibility to each other in a society and what we consider as society is acceptable behavior or not. So when it comes to teaching kids ethics or even each other, I think one of the key things is we got to make sure that we are talking to each other. You can't learn ethics from technology. You can't learn ethics from ChatGPT because it doesn't have any ethics. It doesn't have any idea of empathy. It doesn't have an idea of an emotional or a human connection. And the reason, in my opinion, the reason that you are bound by an ethical construct is because inherently, and I'm a humanist, as a human, you are reluctant to give another human any kind of pain or a negative emotion, right? So that constitutes kind of your ethical boundary. I am not willing to do anything that will give somebody else a negative outcome. In this call, I'm not going to shout here because it might cause everybody else to feel like they're not having a great experience. It won't be ethical, right? So I don't have an answer for this, but I think all the folks in anybody's life who give them a sense of meaning, or at least teach them a sense of meaning, have to have the responsibility to also guide them on how to construct their own like
True.
sort of ethics, right? So it comes to the parents. Parents have to be a role model and they have to get involved. Parenting cannot be outsourced to the phones, it cannot be outsourced to the teachers, the educators. Parenting is, by definition, not about teaching them subjects, but it is about teaching them values, and that's
Right.
where ethics comes. Values comes from your elders in your house, your parents, your grandparents, your grandmothers, and yeah, of course. I mean, traditionally in our Indian society, it's the concept of guru, and guru is also an elder. And there is some level of values that you get from teachers. We had some great teachers that gave us some great values in our time, as you would remember, Sonali. So and then you will also get ethics. Like if you're working in an office, when you grow up as a young adult, you get a lot of values from the first few leaders you work with. At first time you were working in a company, you work with the CEO, and the way he behaves, that charisma gives you a sense of what's
True.
right and wrong. It's a responsibility we all carry in how we present ourselves. I'll give you a very small example of this, which I got to as a personal sharing. I am used to working with my cell phone all over the time, and I'm in an environment where I have to be connected every time, right? So I would always carry my cell phone with me. If I'm eating, I'll put it on the table, and I will get messages, and I'll pick it up and I'll use it. And then over the last couple of years, I have come to realize that, and especially I'm thankful for my kids who are bringing it to me, that that's actually not the right thing. So first of all, I'm not being a role model for being disconnected safely. Constant connection is not good. Constant consumption is not good. I am also not being able to connect meaningfully with people around me. In fact, I'm being a bit disrespectful by sharing that I'm at the mercy of a device. Their attention to me is at the mercy of a device that's on my table. So I'm now moving towards removing the phone from my ecosystem. What I mean to say is, if I'm talking to someone, my phone is in my pocket. It's not on the table. It's not on. It's not available for people to think that I've got something else on. When I'm talking to my kids, I keep the phone away. Right? When I'm talking to anybody that I need to have an understanding on what they are saying and I need to consume that, I'm not going to look at my phone. If somebody is so urgent that they need me, they'll call me and it's okay, right? And what happened to the world when people were sleeping from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m.? It was not like nuclear wars happening, right? So like what kind of disaster I can't handle when I wake up. So I think it's okay. So just that understanding and reality and figuring out has taken a big notch forward. And it has helped me to be the right role model for my ecosystem and my kids as well. So to your point, that ethics comes at least in living the same values and really living them. Unless and until you do that, it's not going to change for your kids.
No, it's thank you, Vivek, for sharing that personal experience. So I do a podcast on parenting with another neuroscientist, Dr. Blanca, called Nurturing Brains. And there we were discussing this last week, how students, children, students even, they mirror the adult around them. The mirror effect is for real. So how we believe, what values we have, subconscious, unconsciously or consciously, we give it to the people around us, people we interact with. And thank you for sharing that personal experience. And we are almost towards the end of the conversation. I do want to have 3 or 4 minutes at least for the audiences in case they have questions. But before I do that, I want to ask Parth and Lakshmi a very short ending question, and we'll keep it concise. So I'll start with you, Parth. Parth, you stand at the bridge of schools and the career landscape that a student goes through. They are out of a school, they are not yet a working professional. So it's that whole transformation time that they have. So from the perspective of higher education, would you briefly just give maybe 1 or 2 recommendations for the parents here or the high school counselors who are listening in to us? What would be your recommendation on how should students be thinking at this juncture to prepare themselves better for the future?
Sure. I think the two biggest things I can talk about is one, let all children learn interdisciplinary skills, and do not stop them from, do not say that they should learn only sciences or arts. There is enough time to go into a specialization in your life. And the way, shorter careers are there or shorter jobs are there, you're going to have 15, 20 jobs in your lifetime, which means you need to have multiple skills. And the second thing that I'll talk about is the ability to understand compassion or understand human problems.
Empathy. Yeah.
Because we need to work a lot on that. In this rat race, everybody is in a hurry to, cut out the next person. And if you don't teach your young people compassion and caring, we'll leave a planet, which is fighting with each other for everything.
Wow, that's profound. Thank you for sharing that, Parth. Dr. Lakshmi, I want to ask you the same question, but I would change it slightly to say that from the context of ensuring that our children or our students, they have the opportunity for cognitive development in spite of technology being around them, which is trying to always shut it down. What would you what kind of recommendation, again, 1 or 2 recommendations that you would give either to an educator or to a parent mentoring a child?
Yeah. The first one would be, do not think about cognitive development always. Like, let the children have fun in whatever they want to kind of pick up and do. Okay, I'm also, and I'm also like an education researcher. I've been accused of trying a lot of activities on my kids. Okay, I mean, that comes as a part of being a researcher, right? And
True.
also a parent to 2 kids. I am guilty as, but what really stuck is what they enjoy doing, they will deeply get engrossed in it, right? Let's say my teenager son has learned so many things, but he really loves cooking. You will see him
Wow.
deeply engrossed in cooking and doing something with hands, especially
Wow.
music and cooking are he kind of lets loose.
Wow.
Whereas my daughter has different varied interests. She likes like making drawing and making those cutesy cards and all that. So whatever they enjoy and have fun and are motivated to do, get them to do something with their hands, right? That is something that I would highly recommend. And also the point that Parth said, get them to read as much. Like read, not read like, read, oh, this is a very interesting book. I'm guilty. I'm also guilty. I've pushed my son to read something like, Yuval Noah Harari's new book has come. Why don't you read? He'll be like, no, I'm not interested. Okay, I want to read something fictional, Percy Jackson, or something like that, right? So get them to read anything that they love. So anything that they love,
Wonderful.
they have fun and they kind of, yeah,
Yeah, I have that book, yes.
yeah. Anything they have fun, they kind of love and they kind of, encourage them to do that. That's my, yeah.
Wonderful. I think the best advice ever. It's just that the insecurity of parents, again, kind of mirrors in what we ask them to do. It all ends up being that, right? So we are almost at the end of the discussion. I mean, it's a discussion that can go on for days. We have touched upon many things. My purpose of having all of you together was not to go into the details because that will take months to discuss, but to at least bring up some of the discussions that are worth having, whether they have an immediate answer or not. We may not have all the answers today, right? But it was a step forward. It is a step forward when we start asking those questions, because that's where it all starts. We talked about this in the beginning. Before we wrap up, I want to probably give the audience We have about a minute, but maybe if all of you are okay with it, we'll see if the audience has some questions. So audience, if you are listening in and if you have a question, please type in the questions. We will take a few questions from what we have received in the comments section. Please go ahead. I see one question from Anirban Parua. He says, how will teachers and parents need to learn or unlearn in the age of AI and information overload, misinformation, in order to become a role model for the kids? Wow, we could have a session on that by itself. But would any of you want to pick up the question?
Yeah, I can start. And I think the first thing is to, go approach it with a lot of humility. I think we as adults take ourselves so seriously that I have learned this for the last 20 years, approach it with a sense of humility. I'll give you a small incident. One of my 8-year-old, we were just standing outside the elevator, waiting for the elevator. She saw a statement called 4% only. 4% only. So she said, why should it be persons? Why is it not people? Right? Because it is one person, it is 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. I said, you're right. I mean, yeah, they made a mistake. So I think approaching it with humility is to start, because I don't know much, right? Like Parth really said, it's going to be 15, 20 jobs. We don't know how things are going to change.
Yes.
We need to constantly relearn stuff. So approaching it with humility is where I would start with.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi, for that.
Yeah,
Please,
to
please, Vivek.
said, I think we, I feel, has always been taught that compliance is important for teaching. And in this day and age, I think we also need the kids to be okay with being a little bit non-compliant, to be okay with questioning. So if we can kind of manage that remarkably well, then we would be teaching them to also have that same humility when they grow out in the world and not take it at face value, whether it's spoken by a teacher, written in a book, or coming from ChatGPT.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Parth, would you like to add something to that?
Sure. I think the only thing I'd like to add as people who are probably not digital natives, be open to new learning, have conversations, ask maybe maybe your children, maybe a young person in your office, can you teach me how to do this? Show them that you are open, and I love what Lakshmi said about being open, about being humble. Very rarely will a boss or a parent tell the child, okay, why don't you tell me how to do this? If you can practice that a few days, I think everything will be okay.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, all of you. I think that was a beautiful conversation to end this entire discussion that we've had over the last hour. And if we don't have any more questions, please, if you do want to ask more questions to our guests, please put it as a comments in the LinkedIn section. This has been live telecast on LinkedIn and YouTube. Please go ahead and wrap it up there. And I'm sure that our guests would love to get back to you on the LinkedIn forum if you have any specific questions on the topic. And to wrap up, I just wanted to quote, this is something I was reading, and I thought I will quote this to end up this session. And this is by Sir Arthur C. Clarke. We all know he's the father of robotics. So he says, before you become too entranced with gorgeous gadgets and mesmerizing video displays, let me remind you that information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. And wisdom is not foresight. So we are at that inflection point. Yeah, we are at that inflection point where it's clear that AI, hands-on learning, they need to coexist to ensure that students don't just learn passively, they don't just passively consume the technology. They need to be able to engage with it. They need to be able to analyze, question, and create solutions. It's not automation, right? It's not about automation. AI may enhance the efficiency, access to information, but it is the cognitive, hands-on learning, working, as you, Dr. Lakshmi said, the whole thing about cognitive, what was the word you mentioned, the technical word?
It was embodied cognition. No, you're just saying
Embodied
learning with the body,
cognition.
learning with the body.
Hands-on learning, yeah. Embodied cognition. That is what is going to nurture the critical thinking and problem solving. So these are the skills that are going to remain human. And these are the skills which will keep us human and are essential for the future. A future that is common for them and for us. Their future is also going to be our future. So thank you very much, Vivek, Parth, and Lakshmi, for taking the time out of this busy schedule. Vivek, it's past 11 o'clock at your place, I think almost 11. So thank you very much for joining and sharing your invaluable insights. We have had a beautiful discussion. I could go on for days, but unfortunately, we will have to put a stop to it here today. Thank you for bringing the conversation out, and thank you to the viewers as well who have stayed with us, putting the questions there, the comments there, and engaging with us. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lakshmi and Parth.